Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Tech Talk by DigitalOcean. My name is Mason Egger, and today we will be building some web applications with Django, which will be really exciting. I'm a big Python user fan, big Django developer. Actually been using Django for, oh goodness. One of my first websites was built in Django, and I want to say that I used Django in like 2013. So it's been 8 years, off and on, obviously. But today we're going to go ahead and just talk about Django. We're going to probably just start at the beginning. It's a great place to start. Yeah, there's a movie that says that somewhere. We're going to start at the beginning with Django, and we're just going to build a web application until I run out of time. I'm just going to keep adding things until we get there. So today's web application that we're going to build is actually one that everyone can build. Because to this day, I still think that the Django tutorial is by far one of the best ways of getting started with Django. This is how I got started. I still very commonly refer to this documentation whenever I'm like forget something, or I'm like, I don't remember exactly how to do that thing in the admin panel. Let me come here and do it. So I would always recommend just Google Django tutorial. Like when you Google Django tutorial, it's the first thing that comes up always. It's docs.djangoproject.com. Django 3.2 was released, so it looks like their SEO hasn't updated yet to where we should use the 3.2 version. But 3.2 is the latest version of Django. This dropped last week. We talked about it on Cloud Chats last week. It's got a lot of really cool new features, which they're a little bit more advanced features, so we probably won't get into those today. However, if people like this chat, I might end up doing more Django talks in the future. I could talk about Django for hours. It's good to see everybody here. We have people in from the Philippines, which is awesome. Someone from Malaysia. It's nice to see all y'all. Hi, John from the Philippines. Hi, Tilawa from Malaysia. Ron from the Philippines. It's just great to see everyone here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first things first with the Django project is you basically create a directory. And I have this directory here that we're just going to go to my terminal to deal with, called Tech Talk. This is my Tech Talk for today, and there's nothing in it. So as always with Python projects, you want to start with a virtual environment. Oh, we got a whole bunch of other people coming in. Vince from Kenya, Ryan from Taiwan, Rakesh from India, Juan from Colombia, someone from Morocco, Thiago from Brazil. Lots of people. Brazil. Yes. Someone from Mexico. I'm from Austin, Texas. If you can't see the little Texas in the background. Been to Mexico plenty of times. Love going down to Mexico. Looking forward to going back again. If you're in just small plug, one of my favorite conferences in the world is PyCon Latin America, and it was in Puerto Vallarta at an all expense paid resort, and I almost didn't come home. I was like, I'm not coming home. I'm staying here. We can talk about Python. We're on the beach. The food is amazing. Never leaving. So it's awesome to see everyone here. So happy that we have people here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with a virtual environment. So python-m venv, and then I have, well, first, let me make sure I don't actually have a virtual environment called Django already. I do not. Cool. Python-m /dot virtual environment, or venv, sorry, you got to use the command, /dot virtual env Django. So whenever you create your virtual environment, I don't know. I personally, I used to use virtually in VWrapper, so I got really accustomed to using like a .virtualenv in my home directory. But I have been playing with PyCharm a lot lately, and PyCharm makes the virtual environment like right in the directory, which honestly is pretty nice. One day I will get to that. I feel like that actually is pretty nice. The virtual environment wrapper used to have like really nice tools and stuff, but honestly, I don't use it as much as anymore. I just know the base Python commands, so we'll see. So once we've created our virtual environment, let's go ahead and let's activate it. Ooh, hello from Ghana, from Thailand, from Norway. Man, we are all over this world today. Okay, so a question that I'm constantly seeing up in the chat is, do we issue e-certificates after the webinar? No, we do not. We do not currently provide e-certificates of attendance. If that's something of interest to you, leave a comment and we can discuss it on the back end. It's something that honestly has never crossed my mind. But yeah, leave a comment and we can always discuss it internally. But no, we do not have certificates for this. But yeah, thanks for asking. So we've activated our virtual environment. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to install pip install Django. And as you can see, put Django 3.2 is installed. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and pip freeze requirements.txt because I want to keep my requirements set. It's always good to do this so you can kind of pin the versions of all of your requirements. Now, another reason I did this immediately is because I want to actually install a couple of more packages, but these are development packages that I want to use like for local dev, but I don't want to use them. I don't want them installed whenever we deploy this, which we might not even get to deployment today. But I actually might do a whole tech talk on deploying Python apps, scaling all of that. I have an idea for it. It's right here on my little notes. So the next thing to do is let's pip install Pilot for static analysis. Let's install Black. Let's install Pilot -Django so we can get the Django plugins for all of this. Someone's asking how long will this take? These tech talks are usually scheduled for an hour. I tend to go over slightly, but this will be over within the hour. So if you need to drop off because maybe you're in a part of the world where it's not, it's 10 o'clock in the morning for me, feel free. These are immediately uploaded to YouTube after the fact, so you will totally be able to watch this at a later date if you're. Because I know a lot of people who are probably in India right now. It's probably pretty late, so feel free. But yes, so now that I've installed that, I have my developer tools, which is what I need, and I'm going to go ahead and run Django Admin start project, and we're going to call it Tech Talk. And that created a Tech Talk project that has manage.py and Tech Talk. Now, I'm a little bit, so it creates like this 2-tier layer of directories, which is okay, but I really do not see most of the need for it, especially for beginner and simple apps, especially apps that I know I want to deploy to DigitalOcean's app platform or any sort of path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this Tech Talk to a directory called TMP, so it changes the name. Then I'm just going to move everything out of TMP and move it here. So that way we've basically moved everything in that directory one level up. There's nothing in the TMP directory now, and I'm just going to move TMP. Great question I just saw in the chat. Ahmad asks, is there a problem using pipenv? No, there is not. I actually like pipenv. I used to use pipenv all the time. I haven't used it in a while. I do know that development on it had stopped for a while. It's kind of back up. Like it had, open source projects typically sometimes have maintainer issues. So I'm going to eventually get back into using pipenv. I might even do like a talk on Python package management in general. Another idea for a tech talk, Python package management. So y'all give me ideas, so I have to write them down so I don't forget. So Python PKG manage. There we go. So you can use pipenv because that totally does solve the developer and production level dependency problems. So yeah, but for now I'm using that. Okay, someone asks, can we skip Python, env, or venv? You can if you want to. I wouldn't. I use Python virtual environments all the time. It keeps things isolated, keeps things nice and separate. Especially whenever you want to deploy this, you don't want to bring in all of the things that you've ever installed because it's just going to make the Docker container bigger. It makes the deployment longer. So I always use a virtual environment. So that's my guess. Someone asks, is that a terminal? Yes, this is the Microsoft terminal. It's a pretty nice terminal. Someone asks about what about using MK Virtual Env? Yeah, I've used that before. I used to use that. That's like a third-party plugin or a thing that you install. Do I even have it installed? Yeah, see, I don't have it installed. That's why my virtual environments are in a virtual environment directory. So you can use that. I haven't used it in a long time. I used to use it all the time. I'll answer one more question, then I gotta get going on. But advantages of using a virtual environment. Virtual environments isolate the packages. Like if you're developing multiple Django apps, you maybe have packages that are incompatible with other versions. And if you install them all into one big bucket, it could potentially just create a lot of mess. So it's always good to keep your environment. It's basically having a clean slate every time. You don't have to worry about weird dependencies or weird things that are happening. So I really wouldn't. I would always use a virtual environment. And yes, I am referring to virtual environment wrapper. And yes, we are going to use VS Code for Django. Okay, so we have our tech talk. We have manage.py. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do Django. We're going to do Python. Is it Django Admin? I think it is Django Admin. Oh, first off, I want to show you that it's actually running. So you can do Python manage.py run server. We have 18 unapplied migrations, so we don't have anything there yet. So if we go to localhost 8000, we now have a Django app. So that's all you have to do to get a Django app running. Django is running. It's got the cute little rocket ship. But yeah, the Django start project, and now we have a base one. The way that Django apps are architected, however, is a little bit different. So this tech talk is not actually an application. If we look inside of this tech talk directory, oh, why I put ls. As you can see, we have asgi.py, settings, URLs, WSGI. This is the main settings folder for this app. Now, this app doesn't do anything right now. I have to add, actually this project, I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong terminology. Whenever I want to add stuff to it, I add applications. So and Django makes it very modular, so you can add multiple apps in one. They kind of create it in a way that allows you to be able to basically export different parts. So say I created an app that was a polls, had login, and had, I don't know, true false quizzes. I could create 3 separate apps for those. And when I create 3 separate apps for those, they would be 3 different things in this top level directory. And then I would basically bring them all together in the settings directory, in this tech talk directory, and that's how they would run. So, what we're going to go ahead and do next is we're going to go ahead and create our app. So we're going to do Python manage.py start app polls. So we're going to do the polls app from the Django tutorial today, as much as we can get through. So once we've done that, when we come here, we now see that we have a polls directory. And inside this polls directory, there's Dunder init, there's admin.py, which maintains our admin settings, apps.py, which allows us to register our app, migrations, which is where our database migrations will live, and I'll go over migrations more in a little bit, models, which are how we set up our database models, tests.py, which allows us to set up automated testing, which we're not even going to get to today, and then views.py, which is where you kind of set your routes and your rules for your routes. So with that being said, let's go ahead and open up VS Code, because now we need to make a couple changes. So inside our polls directory, let's go ahead and get our hello world. So we're going to go to views, and we currently have from Django. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to find our virtual environment. Here we go, right here, and that red line goes away. So in Python, in VS Code, you can select your Python interpreter, which is what I'm doing, and because it's using, it should be using this one. This virtualenv Django bin Python. This will have all of our packages, so it will lint properly. And it looks like it is using the right one down here. It says Django virtual env wrapper. I'm not using virtual env wrapper. It probably thinks because I made it in //virtual environments that it's virtual env wrapper, because that is what virtual env wrapper does by default. That's just how I set up my stuff, because again, I used virtual env wrapper at the very beginning. That's what it did. So we're going to go ahead and import from Django.http import HTTP response. We're going to do def index request. So this is going to be our hello world. We're going to say return HTTP response. Then we're going to say hello Django. And as you can see, it automatically formatted because we installed Black. My VS Code is all ready to do that. Yeah, so we have a question in here. That's a good one. I love Django, but I think the way the apps are created is not really nice. Why create different folders for small applications? So this is one of my biggest, I'm not going to say arguments, but this is one of the things that irks me a little bit about Django. So basically, yes, you're right. For very small applications, this is kind of too much. But Django actually is designed to run large applications. The largest Django application that I can think of off the top of my head is Instagram. Instagram is a Django app. I'm like 95% positive. So like, yeah, if you're doing a one-off thing, it's kind of odd, but like when you start creating really large code bases, it really does become super helpful. I've actually worked on some of these and they're pretty nice. So that's really why you need it, I would say. But yeah, that's a great question. It's one of those things that you kind of get used to. Django has a lot of, I'm not going to say bloatware, but it comes with a lot of batteries included. Whereas if you were using something like Flask, it's a micro framework. It has almost nothing included. I did a Flask Tech Talk last time, so if you want to watch my Flask Tech Talk, you can. But yes, so def index return HTTP response. This is going to be our hello world. Then we need to actually create a file, and to this day, I don't know why this file is not created by default. urls.py. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say from django.urls import path and from .import views. So this is a way of saying, hey, I want to import the views file, the views basically like code that's in this current directory with me. So this views down here is going to be used by the same one. And then URL patterns equals path, and then we're going to say the root path is going to be, so basically this. So in Flask, you would typically add like a slash. You don't have to do that in Django. So this means root path. If I did something like polls, this would be at /polls. If I did this something at like about, it would be at /about. So empty means index path. Views.index. So we're basically accessing the method that is, so this is just a link to the method that's inside of our views file, and then we're going to give it a name, call it index. This becomes really useful later for accessing things, namespacing our URLs. And then the last thing we need to do real quick is we go down to Tech Talk, and we need to go, so Tech Talk comes with urls.py. So remember, Tech Talk is our project settings. So this polls our app settings, and Tech Talk is our project settings, and it has all of the URLs. Admin is default running. What we're going to do here is we're going to say path polls / and then we're going to include polls.urls. And then did I drop off there for a second? Am I back? I think I'm back. Magic voice in the sky. If I'm back, can I get a thumbs up? We're good. Awesome. So anyway, I'm going to go back a little bit because I think I might have dropped off and I don't know how much I missed. So what we did is we created a URLs file that allowed us to basically set the root path to our thing. The root path of our index. So this is where we go to polls / that's where we're going to go. Then we do views index, and then now we went to our settings, our project settings, and we went to their urls.py, and we're going to include polls. So we basically added the include library, and then we say at the path polls include all of the URLs in polls. This is another one of the good things about the separation, the way that Django architects its applications and their separation, is that it allows us to keep our URLs separate. If I was like, I don't want to pollute all of this, I only want to include what's there. So if I was to delete this, I could just, comment this out, and I've removed all of the polls. There could be thousands of URL redirects in there. So it kind of allows us to kind of keep the cross pollution from going. So we're going to go ahead and open up the terminal. And there's really nothing much that's going to be happening in the terminal, but it's still worth kind of watching. I know it's a little bit small. What we're going to do here is we're basically going to say Python manage.py run server. I think I'm in the right directory. Yes, I am. So our app is running at localhost again. So if we go here, it's going to say, hey, and so as soon as you add another URL outside of the admin, you no longer get the fancy page. So now that we've added this polls URL, it's going to say, hey, techtalks.urls, you don't have anything at just /index. You do have something at admin and you have something at polls though. So let's go to polls. And it says, hello, Django. Now, if I wanted to change this, which I think I'm going to for the sake of this demo, I'm going to remove polls. Since this is our main app, there is no reason for us to like leave the blank page, like the front page empty, at least in my mind. So we're just going to go back to where it runs like this. So we don't have to worry about doing it polls. So that's going to be a little bit different from yeah, that'll be a little bit different from what, the typical app does. So, yes, that is a hello world in Django. So from here, we're going to move and talk about databases and models and our database models. So let's go ahead and close these out. So models.py. Models.py is where we create our database model. So one of the really powerful things about Django, at least in my mind, and the reason that I've been dabbling in Python web development, I can't believe it's been 8 years, but it's been about 8 years. And I did it professionally for a small period of time. For like 3 years, I actually that's what I got paid to do. And the rest of the time it's been hobbyist or like me just working on open source projects. And I always find myself back to Django. Like, I love Flask. Flask is great. But as soon as I find myself wanting a database, I find myself back to Django. SQL Alchemy is a great project. To me, I don't really like it. To me, I like the Django ORM. I'm not going to say anything bad about SQL Alchemy. It's a great tool, and some people really like it. But I love the Django ORM. It's made my life super simple. So, and by the way, ORM stands for Object Relational Mapper or mapping. And essentially, it's instead of me having to write very specific commands like select star from table, get this, it allows me to essentially use Django's built-in methods. So Django built in a whole bunch of methods that make database management easier, but also these methods allow us to change out the backend of the database. So in development, like locally today, we're just using the default SQLite that comes with Django. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with using SQLite. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I have to have a managed database. If you're doing a small app and you were just gonna, okay, here's how I'm gonna put it. If you were just going to install a database, like say I was installing this on a droplet, on a DigitalOcean droplet, a server, $10 server, 2 CPU, 2 core. If I was just going to install MySQL or Postgres on the same exact droplet and then just access it through there, you might as well use the SQLite database because you're really not getting any advantages of it. You still have it on disk. Now, if you need it to be highly available, if you want to do load balancing of Django, where maybe you have multiple apps, then you would need probably a database either on a server or you could use a managed database. I tend to lean towards managed databases. I 100% am not a database person. Like I know about databases. I know enough about them to get a proof of concept running, and then someone has to come in and go, okay, you messed up your models, go away. More often than they have to optimize for me. So I don't really know a lot about maintaining databases. It's just one of the things that I've never really dealt with it. So that being said, let's go ahead and create our first model. So this is the polls app. So what we're going to do is we're going to create questions that we can ask, and then we're going to create, made a boop. And then we're going to create choices that go with those questions. So question, and it's models.model. And then we're going to say question text equals models.car field. Max length equals, we're going to say 256. So essentially, the way that these work is it creates like a character field. Django has all of these different fields: char field, Boolean field, IP address field, date time field, foreign key, integer field. It's basically like creating a database schema. And that's how we go with that. So we have the question text, and then we're going to say the publication date is equal to models.datetime field. And we're going to, I called it dat time field, date time field date published. So that's how we're going to call it. We're going to call this is the date that they were published. And then one of the things we need to do is define one of the magic methods, str. We're going to call it self. We're going to return self.questionText. This basically allows us, whenever we're accessing these from either the admin or the CLI, it would just show up like the object ID, and that's very useless to us. So having the question text there makes things a little bit better. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a choice model, models.model. And we're going to say question equals models dot foreign key question. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add this on delete equals models.cascade. So let's talk about that for a second. So what this essentially is saying is that we're creating a foreign key back up to question. So that basically means that there cannot be a choice that does not exist without a question. Like, so if I said, what's your favorite color? Red, blue, green. Then we're going to create those red, blue, green are going to be associated with question in a database, and they're going to be their own database and they're going to have their own count. However, we cannot have a choice like red, blue, or green unless it's attached with a question. If we delete the question, then all of the choices will also be deleted. So this is what this is saying. I'm going to glance at the questions real quick. What operating system am I using? Windows, Cascade. Oh, you're right, Cascade. Models.cascade. We would have found that. Thank you for the typo error. Someone's asking how to deploy a Django app on DigitalOcean. I'm gonna plug my tutorial real quick. There, you can always look up DigitalOcean tutorials, but honestly, this is the article that I wrote regarding how to do it on app platform. So I would definitely look into that link. Yeah, those are the questions I think I have time to answer right now. I know people are asking like which editor. It's whatever you want to, whichever editor you want. I like VS Code, but I also use PyCharm depending on my mood for the day. Choice text equals models.carfield. Max length equals 256. Yeah, that's right. And I'm questioning all of my typings. I have this weird tendency, like, because usually like these Carfield is like 200 in the base one. I have this weird tendency to like, if it needs to be a power of 2. That's how I've always made my things. I don't think it makes any difference at all. I would imagine that if you're like filling space, maybe it matters to, actually use the full like length, but I have no idea. So yeah, so then the number of votes it got is we're going to do models.integer field, and then we're going to do the def, we're going to do the magic method again for string self return self.choice text. Okay. I'm actually curious if I had done models.that, will it actually have given me an error? So we would have found it. So whenever I had that typo, it would have made a difference. So another thing about using Pilot, I love using the Pilot and the Pilot and Django plugin. It does really help. Yeah, I guess 255. You're right. 255 does make sense. Yes. So these are our models. So the next thing we need to do is we want to actually test out our. The next thing we need to do is we need to, I want to actually like add these models to the database. Like I want our database to work. So we need to go into let's do it like this. Let me show you this first. So let's go ahead and do Python manage. Whenever you see me running the thing, let's do it from here. Python manage.py run server. As you can see, it says, hey, you have 18 unapplied migrations. Your project may not work properly until you do this. Go ahead and create an app. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do Python manage.py migrate. Okay, so this added all of our migrations, but look, it says content types, auth, admin, content types, auth, sessions. Our database model that we created did not show up here. It's because we haven't told it that it exists yet. So again, whenever manage.py is run, it typically looks at the settings files and stuff, especially for the migrate, and it goes to see what apps are installed. So if I don't want my polls app running, then I just remove it. But if I do want my polls app running, then I have to do polls.apps.pollsconfig, which is literally right here. So inside of our apps, you have this apps config, import app config, and it says, hey, these are your app config. So the auto field, I think this is the new part in 3.2, and we're going to call the app polls. So by putting it in here, we have now we have now said, hey, let's actually do this. Let's actually use these now. So if I do Python manage.py make migrations, it has found that polls, hey, we have some migrations. So it created the migrations for us. So let's actually look at these real quick. Let's cat polls migration 001 initial.py. So this is a file that is usually auto-generated, but you really don't need to, like, you can write these yourselves. I know people that write their own migrations, and man, they're good. But this basically is all of the data that is going to be put. This is how it's going to be put inside of our database. So we've created a migration. So then the next thing we want to do is we're going to do Python manage.py SQL migrate. And then it's polls. I always mix these up in my head. Polls 0001. Because if you remember when I can't scroll up. It told us that the number was 0001. And then this is the actual database like entry. Like this is the actual SQLite code. So it's going to say, hey, this is the migration. We've made the migration for you. And like it's ready to go, but it still hasn't been committed. And then what we need to do is manage.py migrate. And it adds all of those polls, all of these database tables to our database. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to like play around with this. So let's go ahead and say Python manage.py shell. So this allows us to actually use a shell that has all of our Django libraries automatically installed. So that now we can actually mess around with our database. So let's say from polls.models, go ahead and import choice, and let's import question. If I go ahead and say question.objects.all, well, there are no questions. We have none yet. So let's go ahead and create one. But first we need to do from Django.utils import time zone. Will help us with the date published. So let's say Q equals question text equals what's your favorite programming language? And then we're going to say pub date equals time zone dot now. Okay, so now if I hit on Q, it says, hey, what's your question? What's your favorite thing? Let's say dir Q. These are all of the methods that exist within it. Let's say vars Q. Tells us the state of it, the ID. It has no ID yet because it hasn't been submitted yet. Question text is what's your favorite programming language, pub date. So these are all the variables that are set within inside of this. So now I can't hit clear. So I'm just stuck doing it like that. So the next thing we do is q.save. And now if I go to vars q, as you can see, now there's an ID. So up here, before we had saved it, our ID was none because we hadn't been saved to the database table yet. But today, there is one because we've saved it. So if we do q.question text, it's what's your favorite programming language? We can also do that in q.pubdate. We can update the question text if we wanted to, and then save it. So like, let's see, q.question text. Let's change the question to what was your first programming language? Q.save. And then now if we just do Q, what's your first programming language? And now, lastly, if we do question.objects.all, we can actually see that we have one question in it. So this is how we do database. This is one of the ways you can do it. So you can access your database, which is pretty nice. Like sometimes whenever you just want to like use the REPL to like figure out the query and get all the query stuff working, it's really nice to have this. So one other thing we're going to add is we're going to go back and we're going to add something to our models. If I can find VS Code, there's VS Code. We're going to go back to models and we're going to add a helper function. So we're going to say was published recently. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to return self.pubdate is greater than or equal to timezone.now minus datetime dot time delta days equals 1. Now the only thing is now I do need to go up here and do this. So import datetime. Let's go ahead and from Django.utils utils import time zone. Okay, so we save that. Now we have this nice little helper function that will tell us if it was published recently. So let's actually go test that real quick. From what was it? From Django.model polls.models import question. Let's say q equals question.objects.all sub 0. So q is the first one. Q dot was published recently. And the answer is true because it was published within the last day. So we're good on that. Are there any questions? Let me scroll up real quick and see if there's any quick questions. I've noticed the chat's kind of died down a little bit. Okay, so some of these questions I don't. Yeah, okay, I think we're good. There's some questions here. Like someone asks, what if you only have polls? I'm assuming this was in reference to the settings and the Django made up databases. You still have to add it to the settings. Regardless of if you only have one, you still have to add it. So let's go ahead now and let's actually create some questions in our database using the Django admin. The Django admin is honestly one of the most powerful parts of DigitalOcean. I'm sorry, not DigitalOcean. I'm sorry, of Django. So let's go ahead and use it. So let's go back to our terminal. And the first thing we need to do is we just need to do Python manage.py create super user. So this allows us to create a super user for our database. So I'm just going to leave megger as my default one. It's mason@do.co for an email address. Let me go ahead and make a password. And we have created a super user. So now, go back to VS Code real quick. Let's do Python manage.py run server. So we've got run server. And let's go here and go to admin. And my username was megger. My password was this. And as you can see now, I actually have access to like a Django admin. So like these are all users and groups. So like the Mason Egger is the user. I haven't added a first name and last name, but I can add it. Active is staff, super user. What permissions does Mason have? All of these fancy things, different groups. But as you can see in our authentication, like this is the only thing we have. We really can't create a question yet. And that's because we haven't configured it to create a question yet. So let's go back here real quick and let's configure it. So in this admin file, this tells us how we want our models and how we want our database to interact with the admin. So the next thing we need to do is we're just going to go ahead and like do a lot with this. So we're going to say from .models import choice and question. So the first thing I could just do is I could just do admin.site.register question. So let's start with this. This is the most basic we could do. So we say that, and now we can access questions. What's your favorite programming language? And as you can see, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And as you can see, I also don't know why it's dark mode. It's interesting. It's like Django does default to dark mode now. Yeah, who knows? So, yeah, you can see we have our question here, but we don't have our choices. So we could change this by doing admin.site.register choice. And if we go back here, now you can see the choices is added. We can add a choice and it allows us to pick a question, set the choice text, and votes. Now, this is nice. This is okay. This is doable. If you just did this, then no one could fault you for it. This would give you full, complete control. You could create like a REST framework to do the CRUD, but if you wanted to manage the database on your own, you could do it this way. I used to build blog sites using Django admin as CMS, the content management system. Not the greatest. It works and it can be totally done, but it gives you this ability. But this is not the best we can do. One of the things I love about Django, so there's a handful of things I love about Django. The ORM is number one. Number two is the admin panel. Number three is the authentication system. I actually have a blog post. I have a blog post on my personal blog. Let me see if I can find it real quick. That I talk about when do I choose Django and when do I choose Flask, and it's literally right here. I'll go ahead and post it in the text. And basically it's, do I need auth and do I need a database? And if I need those questions are yes, I go to Django because I like the ORM and the auth is really nice. So let's go ahead and modify this. So this is Mason no likey. We're gonna get rid of this. So one of the things we can do is we can go ahead and say class choice inline admin.stacked-inline. So basically what we're doing is we're creating a different type of default way that it is viewed, and it's choice inline. It doesn't matter if it's uppercase, lowercase. We're going to say model equals choice extra equals 3. What this is going to do is this is going to allow us to, in the question, in the question model, actually view choices and create them. And it's a stacked inline. So you're going to see what that means in a second. It basically means how it's displayed. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to say class question admin is admin.model admin. So this allows us to create an entirely new way of doing our the way that it's presented in the Django admin. We're going to go ahead and say field sets equals this, and we're going to say none, comma, fields, question text. And then we're going to say date information. This allows us to change, I believe, the view. Fields, colon, update. And then we would come over here to classes, collapse. And this is, again, just signaling how things are set up. Then we're going to set inlines equal to choice inline. It's basically a list of all the inlines we want to use. And then we say admin.site.register question. So for the question model, I want to use my personal question admin class. So now if I come back over here, and let's go back to the Django admin, and I click on questions, I click on this question. So the date information is by default hidden. That's what we did with that collapse thing. Is we can show when the date was published, but we're not going to show it by default. And then the question text, we already have them right here. So I don't need to add choices. So what was your first programming language? We're going to say Python. We're going to say Java. We're going to say PHP. And if I wanted to add another choice, I could add another choice here just by clicking this button. And it adds me another choice. And we're going to say C++. Now I click save. And now we have all that. And it's right there. Oh, it looks like it adds 3 more every time, whether or not you need them or not. But it doesn't actually create them. It just makes it nice for you. So let's make sure they weren't. Yeah, that worked out fine. So if we go back to questions, if I wanted to add another question, let's go ahead and say, what is your favorite Sammy? Which DigitalOcean Sammy shark do you like? Now, the weird thing is that it hides it, but it doesn't automatically fill it. And I probably could have done something with autofill, but that's still kind of weird. So we have Rocket Sammy. We have, I'm literally just looking at my, we have Robot Sammy. And we have Skeleton Sammy. I have literally on my PC over here, I have nothing but Sammy stickers. I wish my camera's mounted, otherwise I would show you, but a whole bunch of Sammy stickers. So now I have 2 questions. And now we have some data. So let's actually go and work with our Django site. So let's go ahead and add a few more views. Let's add some default views real quick. So let's say def detail request question ID, return, and we're going to say response equals you're looking at the results of question. We'll just say, we can use an F string here, can't we? Question ID. Yeah. And we just return. Actually, we can just do this all in one if we wanted. Return HTTP response that. Then let's go ahead and add a def. That was actually supposed to be results. Sorry, not detail. Def detail request question ID. So return HTTP response. Oh, I didn't put the F here for F string. F quote, you're looking at question ID. Like that. And then the last one we're going to do, def vote request question ID. We're going to say return HTTP response. F string again. You're voting on question ID. There we go. We got all that. Like no errors in the code. Let's go ahead and add some more URLs. So that's the other cool thing is now I can add URLs. I don't have to go back to my other one that like my project URLs. I can just add them here. So let's say path. And actually, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to copy and paste here. Because I do want I'm running a little bit out of time and I want to make sure I can get a little bit farther with this. So basically what we're doing is we're saying int question ID, so that way we can pass it in, and then question ID results, question ID vote, the base one, views.detail, views.result. So every path we set it a specific name or specific function that we want it to use, and we give it the name for namespacing. So let's go to our views and let's work on index real quick. So what we can do now is we can do latest question list equals question dot objects dot order by. We can order them by our negative pub date, which is basically the reverse, so most latest. And then we can just do some fancy that's not list comprehension, but just slicing to get that to work. Output equals dot join. We can do some q.question text for q in latest question text. So some nice list comprehension there. Return HTTP response output. Okay. Oop, we got some errors. Where's our error? Oh, I didn't import question. So from .models import question. So let's save that. And then if we go back over here, and let's go to just base. Ooh, latest question text not defined. Oh, I put it as text instead of list. List. You good? Everybody good? Oh, still something. I think that's actually fine. For some reason, this .objects member always gives. Let's try it. I think that's like just a weird error that I get sometimes. Yeah, that's a weird error I get sometimes. The pilot Django VS Code plugin stuff sometimes makes boo-boos there, and I don't understand why. So, anyways, what's your favorite, Sammy? What's your first programming language? Now we are getting these. So the next thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and create some templates. So what we're going to do is inside this polls directory, we're going to create a new directory called templates. And within that templates directory, we're going to create one called polls. I don't really know exactly why we do that, but we do. Index.html. I've never actually terribly deep into that. So let's go ahead and get, I'm just going to copy and paste this, but this is, excuse me, the Django, this is the Django templating language. So basically, if there's anything in the latest question list, so if something actually came through, then we're going to say, we're going to create an UL is what, unordered list? Yeah. For question in the text, then we're going to create a link to the question ID, create like a relative link here, put the question text there, and then if nothing shows up, then it'll say no polls are available. Yeah. So let me go and run this code and see. I think I actually have to restart it for some reason. I'm not doing the rendering. That's what I didn't update my method, which is okay. So let's go to polls. This is why you always prepare in advance, because even I miswrote my notes. Here we go. So let's go over here to views. Yeah, you're still complaining. Get over it. So we still want that, and then we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to say context equals latest question list. So this variable, what we put this key here is what has to match up here. So since we called it latest question list, that's what we have to put here in the context. If we call it fluffy puppies here, then it has to be fluffy puppies here. Can't do fluffy kittens, it won't work. So, and then we just say latest question list. And then what we're going to do is we have render up here. We're going to return render request. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, I want to use the template that's at polls/index.html. And then we're going to say send context. So we're going to send the request back. We're going to have polls.html, which is the template that we want to use. And we're going to say context. And I really wish you didn't do that. I need to figure out if that's a bug in that, and maybe I could fix it. So this is live. Thank you for asking. So if we refresh this page, now we have our template. If we actually deleted this, it would just say no polls to answer. No polls to go with. Got 8 minutes. Can we get through it in 8 minutes? I think we can. Yes. Okay, next part. So let's go ahead and update the question one. So what we're going to do is, so if they click on that, let's see what happens when they click on that. Basically says 404 not found. We don't have anything right now for that. So I thought I did that, but we'll fix that in a second. So we go back here. Let's go ahead and say question. And then we're going to use a really cool method that the Django shortcuts give us, which is get object or 404. Which basically what we're going to do is we're going to do a really quick lookup on it. So we're going to say get object or 404. We're going to say look for questions and look for the question, this question ID. If it shows up, let's just say return render request polls/detail.html. And let's say question is equal to the question. Now let's go ahead and create really quickly over here a detail.html. And honestly, just for simplicity's sake, we're just going to say question. So if we go back to this. Okay, so where this is messing up is it's adding this extra polls here. Whenever we went back in, we could just change the template real quick, right? Yeah, change the template. We have to do /question ID. So let's come here. Let's go back. Still doing it. Unable to unpack a non-iterable int object. Are my URLs also messed up? Let me check my URLs. Should just work. Where are you? Okay, so it's upset there. It's upsetty spaghetti. What do we got? Question ID, non-iterable int object. Oh, I didn't put a. Okay, I have to actually put primary key is equal to this. Now we try again. There we go. Okay, we got it. We're good. Yes, I do. Yes, I always love doing live tutorials because errors do happen. They happen to everyone. And it happens. I know that this was meant to be more of a beginner Django one. If people are interested in me doing a deep dive into Django, that's definitely a tech talk that I can put up, or I can think about. Any resources for Django REST? I think it's my next tech talk, but I'm doing a tech talk soon on Django REST. Like, we're going to do an entire tech talk just on Django REST. I think that'll probably be in 2 weeks. I'm either doing Django REST next or I'm doing Fast API next, which is another new Python framework. So yeah, there will be a Django REST tech talk eventually. So just to kind of speed things up a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to update this detail to basically be able to go through and pull out the choices and tell me like who voted for what. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to copy the code here for vote, and I'm going to briefly go through it because the typing takes a little bit of time. And I need to do from Django.urls import reverse, and then HTTP response, and then we're also going to do HTTP response redirect. Okay, so I'm going to kind of power through this really quickly. Yeah, and then we're going to say, I'm going to create a quick template for results, results.html. We're going to put that there. And I'm going to just make sure it works before I discuss it with you real quick. Ooh, line 24. Oh, because I did that. Okay, so now we should be good. Let's go ahead and refresh real quick. It's still doing the polls thing. Oh, I didn't do one other thing. I need to update URL to say app name equals polls. So to use URL namespaces, we do app name equals polls. That should fix that. Yeah. Okay. So now we can vote. So what did I do? So really quickly, I just added more results. So this is basically just going to allow us to see the choices and who voted for it and all that. The views that I did is I added the vote view. So the vote, I'm not going to get around to implementing the results view this time. I don't think that's actually going to like come through. I might get to it in a second. Let me see if I have the code here in my, if I have it here real quick, I'll do it. I do. It's right here. I just didn't put it in my notes. There we go. Okay, so what I did here was basically what we're going to say is basically if they want to vote, get the question, see if the question exists. Take their selected choice and see if the choices are there. If the choice does not exist, tell them, hey, you didn't select a choice. If the choice does exist, update the choice by 1 and save it. So basically, this is just a lot of data around making sure that the choice exists. So if you come over here and let's click on what's your favorite Sammy, and mine is Skeleton Sammy, and I click on vote, and it says, hey, that's great, you've got it. You've got Rocket Sammy has 0 votes, Robot Sammy has 0 votes, and Skeleton Sammy has 1 vote. We can vote again. We can also just go back home and let's say, what was your first programming languages? Mine was actually Java. And now we have a basic polls app. So let's go ahead and just talk about it real quick. Yeah. So we vote. We basically, whenever we vote, we go and make sure that the question that they're actually vote, like when we go to that URL, we make sure the question actually exists. If it doesn't exist, hey, go away. Then we get the choice set from the question, and we get it based on so we look for the primary key of the choice that they selected, and they basically say, is this choice that you selected actually here? If it is, great. You add one to the vote and you save it. If not, you say, hey, you didn't select a choice. You probably could say you didn't select a valid choice. And yeah, so I didn't get to really go over a lot of the Jinja templating, but it's relatively straightforward. So the question text is up here. So anything that you pass in, like anything that's in the database options, you can pass in. So like whenever we do results, we pass in the question. So question has question text, pub date, and then the choices for choice. And you can basically do a reverse where you can get the choice set. You can get the choices that are associated with it by doing the choice set. So we know that someone has foreign keyed up. So we do from question choice set dot all, and then we just show all of the options now, and we can see it. That is pretty much all the time I have for today. I know we had to rush through it there at the end. I would have liked to have gone a little bit slower. If you have any questions about what I did at the end, please let me know. I might do, if people really like having Django Tech Talks, I might even do a whole Django Tech Talk on templating, because this, like, I talked about Django and Python and the framework, but literally this Django templating engine is almost its own programming language in of itself. I don't think it is. It actually might be just Jinja 2 templating, which is pretty awesome. So I'm going to scroll up and check on some of these comments. So yes, so people are asking for the Django deep dive. So yeah, I could probably prepare one of those. I am doing Fast API. Magic Voice in the Sky, which is my next one. Send me a private chat and let me know. What did I tell you is my next one? It's either Django REST or it's Fast API. My moderator will let me know before we go, because they are the one who maintains everything. Can you push this into Git? I can. Do you want me to see that real quick? I could do this. Or do you just want to be able to view it? I can push it into Git real quick. There's no problem. That's easy. Repo.new tech talk -Django code from my Django tech talk. Create repository. Then vim.git ignore. I don't have it on the right screen. Star pyc star .sqlite3. And then what else do I not want to make sure I bring in with me? I think that might be it. Yeah, git status. Oh, I'm not there. And the top level, yeah, git init, git status. Oh, vim.git ignore. I don't want to take any of the VS Code stuff with me. Don't. Okay, come on. .vs code /star. Git status, git add-a, git commit -s-m, init commit. I'll move this over here. Okay, that worked. Where's my git repo? Because I always forget this last command. Git branch -m main, git remote add origin, git at github.coms :Mason Egger /talk -Django.git, git push -u origin main. You want to see the code right here. How about a whole Django deployment on that platform? I'm going to do a whole Django Tech Talk on just deploying Django. So Fernando asked, how about a whole Django deployment on DO app platform? We're going to do like deploy to Droplet, deploy to Kubernetes, deploy to app platform. That's a new one that's on my list. People are saying they want deep dive. DigitalOcean for deploying. How do you plan to explore signals later? I can talk about signals. That's a little bit deeper, but we can definitely do some signal talking about it. People are talking about Node.js. The private magic voice in the side says, my next April 28th is my building a REST API with DigitalOcean REST framework, or yeah, Django REST framework, sorry. So if you look at do.co/tutorials or /tech talks, I don't remember which one, it will be up eventually and you'll be able to register for it. So you can get a reminder email. But my next one will be over Django REST. My one after that will be over Flask API. My one after that, I believe, is going to be over the Windows subsystem for Linux, because a lot of people keep asking, are you programming on Windows? And the answer to that question is yes, I am programming on Windows. I use Windows for all of my programming now. I'm programming in the Windows subsystem for Linux, so this is all running there. This is the new command line. I know a lot of people want to see a tech talk on that, so I'm going to do that. Django versus Flask, we can maybe do one of those. CI/CD deployments, all of this. But yeah, that's what I have for today. I think I've answered most of the questions. If you have a question that I didn't ask, put it in the chat now before we go. I'll give you like a minute before I go. Yeah, there's the Tech Talks page for DigitalOcean, so you can see my next one. Give it a little bit of time. I think we're all good on that. I hope you enjoyed the Tech Talk today. We had a good amount of people show up. I'm going to open up the I'm going to open up the Tech Talk. Can you also put scaling up Django in your tutorial? I can talk about scaling sometimes. That would be a little bit interesting. Scaling Django is interesting for sure. That's okay. I do think that's all that I'm seeing today. So feel free. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I think we're good for the day. April 28th, same time, we'll be doing Django. I said we're doing Django REST framework. You can always reach me at Twitter. As you can see, my Twitter handle is @MasonEgger. So if you have any more questions about this, feel free to tweet at me. I'll happily answer them. I'll post my Twitter in here. It's just @MasonEgger. Thank you very much, everyone, and I will see you next time. Have a good day.